Welcome today to the nationwide prayer campaign to end abortion. Yet another day. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Bob Marshall today, the delegate for 26 years in Virginia. With all his knowledge, he's going to teach us a good bit about the Democratic plan. And I just want to give praise and honor and glory to our Lord today on today, the holy day that we worship Him. Thank you again for joining us, and let's get started with the prayers. Today to end abortion. The prayers are so important. The speakers are great, but the prayers are what God demands. And the condition of our hearts, we should be very, very contrite for the sins of our nations, not just our own sins. But I'm very glad today that we have the delegate, Robert Marshall, and he's been a delegate for Virginia for 26 years. And let me introduce you to him if you haven't heard yesterday. So hold on one second. Okay. Delegate Bob Marshall, who served in the Virginia General Assembly for 26 years as a Republican legislator. Bob also was a congressional aide to three members of Congress. Robert Marshall and a colleague devised the original 1976 Hyde Amendment cutting off Medicaid abortion funding. Bob later devised another abortion funding amendment on military, civil service, foreign aid, Indian Health Service, and prisons appropriations bill that are still federal laws. Bob was the House of Delegates author of the 2006 Virginia voter-approved one man, one woman marriage amendment and the still on the books ban on partial birth infanticide. He is the author of more than 50 Virginia laws. He won a precedent-setting lawsuit, Marshall versus North Virginia Transportation Authority, over Governor Tim Kaine, the Attorney General, the Speaker of the House of Delegates, and two-thirds of the Virginia General Assembly as the only sitting state legislator to legally challenge a law that granted power to unelected officials to raise transportation taxes. The Virginia Supreme Court agreed with Delegate Marshall in a 7-0 decision in 2008. Bob Marshall is the co-author of Blessed Are the Barren, Ignatius Press, A Social History of Planned Parenthood. His Eminence, John Cardinal O'Connor, and Dr. Barnard Nathanson, who founded NARAL, wrote prefaces to Bob's book. Bob also wrote Reclaiming the Republic, a how-to civics book for Christians to learn the levers of civic power, published in 2018 by Tan Books. Virginia newspapers recognize Bob Marshall as very well versed in parliamentary tactics. Bob and his wife Kathy have 5 children and 10 grandchildren. So we're honored to have you, Bob, here. Thank you so much. You did a great talk yesterday.
Well, Karen, thank you. I'm glad you're so interested in this to inform Christians about Caesar's world and how it impacts their faith.
Well, you're going to be talking again, part 2 and 3, court packing, and adding D.C. and Puerto Rico as states as part of the plan of the Democrats. So I'll let you have the floor.
Okay, right. There's three parts to their plan to gain majority rule in the permanent status. The first part we went over yesterday was the Equality Act, and parents have got to be paying attention to the candidates that are on the ballot this time in November. If you've got a candidate who's for the Equality Act, and 99 times out of 100 it's going to be a Democrat, you cannot vote for them. Because if you want to protect your children, especially if they're in the government schools, you will have no choice. Because if you have a child which has an inclination to same-sex behavior or is been convinced or has questions about same-sex behavior because of these glisten clubs, these sodomy clubs in the government schools, you have no right to take your child to a psychologist to help them out of this. As a matter of fact, you'll be fined for doing this, even if you can find a psychologist, because it's going to be illegal for that person to attempt to get your child out of same-sex orientation. That's a problem. So you have basically no rights here. Now, the second part of this is to make this permanent. How do they do that? If they pass the Equality Act because enough Christians didn't go to the polls and not vote for them on November 3rd, they will pass this Equality Act in the House. They already passed it in the House last year. It will pass in the Senate, where it's being blocked right now by Senator McConnell from Kentucky, who's the majority leader. And it will be signed by, God forbid, Joe Biden, who says he will sign this within the first 100 days of his presidency. Now, Biden has gone so far on this that he's on record saying that an 8-year-old can figure out that they want to pursue this transgender behavior, which is ridiculous. But he's out there that far. Now, how do they go about this? In Congress in 1937, this is the court packing part, and the other part is Congress packing. In 1937 in Congress, Franklin Roosevelt, because he had lost a number of cases of legislation that he proposed to get America out of the Depression, the New Deal legislation, he proposed adding up to 6 members of the Supreme Court. Now, this hadn't been changed since the 1860s. It's been 9 members since that time. And he wanted to change it. And he says, this is the formula. If a justice is over 70, we're going to add another member of the court if the other one who's over 70 doesn't retire. So that was how he was going to do it. They were going to add up to 6 members. And in fact, this plan of court packing has been rejected or was rejected by the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She said, look, I thought Roosevelt was wrong in 1937 when he attempted to do this. I still think the action is wrong because in 2019, this was being discussed in Democrat primaries. She said, we shouldn't be changing the court. And that is a big problem. So the bill or a bill doing this has been supported by Kamala Harris. She said, I'll certainly consider it. Chuck Schumer, who's the minority leader, 2 members of the Senate Judiciary Committee who were grilling Amy Coney Barrett are for it. And the second part about this is Joe Biden, with the advice of many Democrat leaders, does not want to tell the American public before the election who he intends to support for nomination on the Supreme Court. So, I mean, that's in deep contrast to Donald Trump, who has published at least 40 names of people that he would put on the court. And he picked one of them recently, Amy Coney Barrett. So you've got a guy who's playing secret against the public, and you've got Donald Trump, who is as candid as you can be. So his list of 40 plus members, if he has another chance, I hope he does, if he's reelected, he'll pick from that list. He's told you already. The only thing Joe Biden says is he'll pick a woman who's an African American. That's it. We don't know anything else about him or her. Well, her in this case. So Biden doesn't want to tell you, and he wants to get your vote anyway. That is really, like playing very slick with the futures of Americans. This 1936 bill. Now remember, at that time there were 48 states, so there were 96 members of the United States Senate, 2 per state. 76 members of the United States Senate in 1937 were Democrats. And Roosevelt had come off a very big victory in the 1936 presidential election. Remember, he was first elected in 1932. He ran for re-election in 1936. He thought he could get away with this. So he proposed a plan to add these members of the court. Well, this was roundly rejected, including by Democrat leaders in the Senate. They passed a report. Report is a a message about a bill that has come before a committee. And this is what they said. It applies force to the judiciary and, in its initial and ultimate effect, would undermine the independence of the courts. It violates all precedents in the history of our government and would in itself be a dangerous precedent for the future. This is the first time in the history of our country that a proposal to alter the decision of a court by enlarging its personnel had been so boldly made. Let us now set up a salutary precedent that will never be violated. We recommend rejection of this bill as a needless, futile, and utterly dangerous abandonment of constitutional principle. And they added this: it is a measure which should be so emphatically rejected that its parallel will never again be presented to the free representatives of a free people of America. That's Senate Report number 711, 75th Congress, first session, 1937. Obviously, the current claque of Democrats didn't get the message because they're out here doing this. Why are they doing it? Very clearly, because they see Amy Barrett as a threat to their so-called abortion rights. Well, if abortion's in the Constitution, they shouldn't have a problem with Amy Barrett. If it's not in the Constitution, and in fact, Lawrence Tribe of Harvard, a professor there, says there's not even a pretense that the right to abortion is in fact in the Constitution. They should be apprehensive. So this bill, like I say, was rejected. Roosevelt lost, although he did win later on in the appointment of some subsequent justices to replace members of the court who were voting against his prospect. One of the justices he voted for, or he nominated and was accepted, was Justice Hugo Black. He had excellent Democrat credentials at the time. Why do I say that? He was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Even so, Roosevelt nominated him, and he was confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. So this is where we are in the situation, and we're going to be faced with that. Next point is what are they going to do with the court? What kind of justices will they appoint? Well, let me give you a hint right here. Not Justice Schumer, but Justices Kavanaugh and Gorsuch were threatened in March 2020 by Chuck Schumer, who was speaking to abortion supporters outside the Supreme Court. In very crude language, he stated, and pointing to the Supreme Court behind him, "I want to tell you, Gorsuch, and I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions." Now, at the time Schumer was speaking, the court was literally hearing a case out of one of the southern states that required abortionists to have hospital admission privileges if something went wrong. What's wrong with that? That's just reasonable prudential care of somebody if something goes wrong. That was too much for the abortionist. It was too much for Schumer, and he issued this threat. You had the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, upon hearing these words, stating that he found this just completely out of bounds, completely off limits. You had the President pro tem of the Senate. He said he was shocked by this. You had the majority leader of the Senate. He said, this is a threat. This is unacceptable. This is not the kind of behavior that we accept. So here is Schumer using street thug tactics, and that's all you can talk about it. The Democrat platform, they talk about they have to have certain identity qualities for the justices they nominate. So that's very problematic. And like I say, Dick Durbin, who's on the Judiciary Committee and was badgering Amy Coney Barrett, and Sheldon Whitehouse, the Democrat from Rhode Island, they have counseled Joe Biden not to disclose who you are going to nominate. That is very, very bad. Now, the third part of this is this Congress packing. What do I mean by Congress packing? The Constitution allows for the Congress to propose states to be admitted to the Constitution. The Democrats in Congress want to add the District of Columbia as a state. Now, and they say that these are very disingenuous reasons. They're not telling you the whole truth. They said, well, the people of the District of Columbia should have representation in Congress. Okay, fair, but this is the problem. The District of Columbia was formed when the states of Virginia and Maryland ceded territory to the federal government to establish the national capital. I think in the 1840s, the Congress gave Virginia back its portion of the Washington, D.C., Washington District of Columbia. The Maryland portion is there. Nancy Pelosi says, well, it's unfair these people can't vote for a U.S. senator. You know, a way to solve that? Congress will simply give back that portion of the District of Columbia, minus certain federal buildings, including the Capitol, and let those people vote as Maryland citizens. That way they would have representation. But the Democrats don't want representation. That's a ploy. They, in fact, want power. That's why they want to add 2 more senators to the United States Senate to make it harder for the Republicans to overcome their court packing plan. They also have floated the idea of adding Puerto Rico as a state. So these people basically, if they can't win by the rules, they abolish the rules. And that is not really the way to work. And in fact, District of Columbia is kind of a radical, had a radical government. In the wake of the Black Lives Matter protests, a committee was reporting to the mayor, Muriel Bowser, said that they should remove, relocate, or contextualize the Jefferson Memorial and the Washington Monument. Now, can you imagine anything so stupid as destroying the Washington Monument? But this is what you're going to get if the District of Columbia becomes the 51st state. So Nancy Pelosi has also suggested impeachment of Donald Trump. Well, if you look at the real Constitution as the one that, instead of the one that Nancy Pelosi thinks she has, you only can impeach a president for bribery, treason, or high crimes and misdemeanors. Following the Constitution to nominate a justice to the Supreme Court to fill a vacancy is not bribery, it's not treason, it's not a high crime and misdemeanors. So what is Nancy Pelosi talking about? She is delusional, as are a bunch of the people around her. This is what we're facing right now. And you've got an election that you need to be paying attention to very seriously. You've got Biden, who says he'll sign this law. He will appoint these justices that will surely uphold this so-called law. And they're going to have, and he will sign a bill adding certain states. They are trying to put us in a vice grip, a hold that we will not be able to get out of. This is a demand for Christians to unconditionally surrender their principles. And the reason I would suggest to you is, if you go back to Genesis 19, when the angels were visiting Lot and the city was about to be destroyed, Lot was talking to these people at the door. They were angry with him because he was making a judgment on their behavior, and they didn't like that. And then the angel blinded them. Well, the people in the LGBT movement don't want any recognition anywhere in American society that legally there are standards of behavior other than those which they propose. And by the way, if you really want to go into it, there's a medical journal article called Beyond Anal Sex by Kara Rice. It's in the Journal of Sexual Medicine, 2016. It's not salacious, but it's very blunt. So if you sit down and read this, expect to be surprised by some of the behavior that is considered normal by the LGBT people. So this is what we are facing. I hope we can alert as many people as we can that they have got to take this very seriously. The Catholic bishops did put an evaluation of the Equality Act in their presidential candidate survey. They didn't go into the detail that we have yesterday and today, but they said it's problematic, and boy, is it problematic. So let me stop right there. And if you have any questions, I'd like to, maybe address those.
Well, it seems like they had plans that were that are already being put into place, but they have things are happening that they didn't plan, like Biden's hard drive that the son's hard drive. You heard about that news?
Oh, yes, yes.
Tell me what you think about that and how this is.
Well, what's very disturbing is that the FBI apparently had a copy of this for over a year and didn't do anything. Or if they did something, it didn't come out in public. So there's an effort to protect Biden from scandal. And this goes from inside the government to these internet platforms like, Google and Facebook and Twitter. So they are biasing the information to the public to get them to vote a certain way. And when they didn't even, matter of fact, Twitter blocked the news statement from the New York Post. Now, about Biden, the New York
which
Post
is
was a paper.
unconstitutional.
Well, what's the Constitution among friends, Karen? I mean, that's how they kind of play this. So the New York Post was a newspaper founded by one of the founding fathers of the United States, Alexander Hamilton. I think it was in 1801. So this paper has a long history of being a reputable publication. So it is up to us. It's not up to the bishops at this point. They only have one vote. I have one vote. You have one vote. But you have got to make sure that you spread the word to inform all your neighbors. Are you making sure that your son or daughter who is in college is voting? Are you making sure that your neighbors are voting? And I would urge the viewers of this to go to the LifeSite News and look at the article that I wrote where I detailed all this. So if you can't remember it upon hearing it, you at least can see it there. And it talks about Christian persecution. It was September 29th. Joe Biden, it will usher in Christian persecution. And my name is Robert Marshall. Take that article, put it on Facebook, and share it all around the United States. You've got to share this news so the Christians know the threat that's coming to them.
I will do that. I hope everybody else follows too. And the whole thing about getting your family involved, unfortunately, our families are not on the same page sometimes, which is a very sad thing because they've gone to college and they've been brainwashed and it's really crazy.
Well, I would just add one thing. It may sound odd, but when Absalom, the son of David, was in rebellion, there was a counselor to David called Ahithophel. And when David found out that Ahithophel was advising Absalom, who was basically starting a civil war against David, he prayed that the counsel of Absalom would come to confusion. So if King David could do this to retain the throne that was given to him by the Lord Almighty, we can pray for confusion. And some of that may be happening with these statements about Joe Biden now having to answer this. So prayers for confusion, as well as prayers for guidance as to what you should do prudentially to get the most votes.
Amen. And there's kind of an implication because with this Hunter Biden hard drive, um, they can't say that this is some kind of a big story that the Republicans, Trump has made up because they have called the lawyer, I think it was Giuliani, of Trump and asked for it back. They're claiming it's theirs.
Well, it's too late now. The cows out of the barn or the drive is out of the computer, and I'm sure there have been copies of it made any number of times around the United States.
This is a big bomb and it's really timely. Even though it was held back, maybe it was held back for a reason because it seems very strategic.
Well, but again, it's up to us to what we do, not what we hope for. Pray, think, and act in that order.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your guidance and also for your spirituality in all this because it's guiding our decision making. And hope you come and speak again. Bob Marshall, thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen.
We'll talk in a few. Hi, everybody. We know that there's so much damage that has occurred over the past century, and it was pre-warned by Pope Leo the 13th, and the damage has come in every area of humanity, trying to break down the church, which it can never do. I mean, you see the damage, but the church is of a divine nature. But we are recognizing everything now. The light is being shown within the church, outside the church, wherever it may be. So, in many ways, people are showing the destruction of the family and the destruction of marriage and the destruction of nations. The only solution to this is love. Love is the perfect answer. It's always been there. Love has a name, and his name is Jesus Christ. Jesus literally gave himself to us sinners. So I'd like to mention that I had a book that was just published, and it's called Love Club. And it came out into circulation in the digital form on the Feast of St. Teresa, which was just a few days ago, and then on the paperback form yesterday, which was the Feast of St. Ignatius. And I was like thinking to myself, I knew St. Ignatius had something to do with this because he had to find love himself. When all these confusing thoughts came into his brain, he distinguished love in the end. So if you would like to read the book and purchase it, it's in Amazon now, and it's available in digital and paperback form. It's called Love Club. What is love? It's as uh, defined by God Himself. So thank you so much, everybody. Hi, my name is Karen Jeffson from John Leaf's Evangelization. We've been doing this live stream to stop abortion since May 13th, 2020, and we try to do prayers each day, every day, with speakers. If you would like to donate to this worthy cause to stop abortion, something that is righteous in the eyes of God, please donate to us at johnleaps.com, johnleaps, Leaps.com, or call 800-313-6933. We could really use it, and we thank you very much. God bless you all.